How to knit the Bubble Beanie Hat. Hi, I'm Kristen and welcome back to my channel, Studio Knit. The Bubble Stitch and my Bubble Beanie Hat pattern have been so popular this past year, I thought it was high time to create a corresponding video for you. This is a great hat if you enjoy changing yarn colors and are comfortable knitting on circular needles. The written pattern is available over on my website, Studio Knit, totally for free. I also have the downloadable PDF pattern that is paid, and it is on Etsy as well as Ravelry. And over on Ravelry, you'll see literally hundreds of knitters have been making these Bubble Beanie hats, and it's great to browse through for inspiration to see everybody's color choices and just how happy everybody has been knitting up this Bubble Beanie hat. So I hope you join along. For yarn, you'll want bulky number 5. Worsted weight works well too, but I really prefer bulky for this project. For the shorter beanie size, you'll want 120 yards. And if you want to do a longer slouchy style, then about 140 yards is great. And you'll see that the yarn I'm using, it's called Karen and Pantone, and this is great because they have exactly the right amount of yarn and beautiful color choices. I will have a link to where you can purchase that. However, feel free to use whatever you have in your stash, any fiber, have fun with it. Your knitting tools are circular needles. These are size number 8 US and 16 inches in length, along with double pointed needles, also size 8, and you'll want scissors and a tapestry needle. So let's knit it up. To begin, we are taking our circular needle and casting on just the simple long tail cast on method is what I'm using. And we start out by casting on 64 stitches in total. Before joining in the round, of course, you want to make sure that you are not twisting your stitches. And I want to share an optional little trick that I like to do. I add an additional stitch. I take the right needle and I simply slip one stitch from the left to the right. And then I add my stitch marker. And for my first stitch, I knit those first 2 stitches together, and it just helps me join my yarn in the round a little bit more securely. So again, this is just something I like to do. It's totally optional. And we are knitting the 2x2 rib stitch, so that's knitting 2 stitches and purling 2 stitches. We are doing that all the way around for 6 entire rows. So the brim of our hat is in the 2x2 rib stitch pattern. It's usually at this point that people think their hat is going to be too small, but trust me, this is a great size for all adults. This hat does have a tendency to stretch, and although the brim looks teeny tiny at this point, it will fit an adult size head, even one as large as mine. We have one increase row. So here we are KFB, knit front and back. So you knit into that first stitch, but you don't take it off the needle. Instead, you bring your right needle around to the back and you knit into that to increase one stitch, and then you bring it around and off your needle, and from one stitch now you have 2. And then K15, that just means that you are knitting 15 stitches. And you're repeating this pattern all the way around. So you're doing KFB 4 times total. We're taking it from 64 stitches up to 68 stitches on your needle. Rows 2 through 6 are super easy. We are knitting all. So just that stockinette stitch that's so easy when knitting in the round, knitting every single stitch. Now at this point, I like to change my yarn colors. It's totally optional. You can do the same yarn color, change it up whenever you'd like. But if you'd like the same color scheme as I have, then this is time to change your yarn color. And personally, I like to knit my old yarn and my new yarn together in that first stitch to help it just stay a little bit more secure before I weave in those ends at the end of the project. We're beginning the bubble stitch pattern, so it starts with knitting 2 stitches. It looks like I have 3, but that's because of that change of yarn color. And now it's time for the big K4B, that's knitting 4 below. So we slip off 1 stitch, and then we take the yarn ladders 1, 2, 3, 4. I know it's so scary the first few times you do this, and then it gets really fun. And you put your right needle into that stitch from the front, and you take it to the back of those yarn ladders. Take your yarn, wrap it around, and then you're just knitting through right there, and you have knit 4 below. It's pretty exciting stuff. And then you knit 3 stitches. So let's do this K4B together again. Well, I don't know if we're doing it together, but I'm going to show it to you on this video one more time. On your left needle, you're slipping 1 stitch off, and then those yarn, you are intentionally dropping those stitches 4 times. With your right needle, put it through that little stitch, bring it to the back, wrap your yarn around, and then you're going to knit it through that stitch right there, and you've caught all of those yarn ladders. You have knit 4 below, and this is the technique that we're using to create those beautiful bubbly textures throughout the entire hat. The last 2 stitches on this first bubble row, we are doing K4B again. So we are dropping our stitch, those 4 yarn ladders, putting our right needle through and to the back, knitting it on through, and finishing up row 1 with just 1 knit stitch. All right. So row 2 and 6 is just knitting all. So we are knitting every single row. We have that nice stockinette stitch, and we can see our bubbles forming. Now row 7, we start with K4B. So let's do that together. We are dropping those 4 yarn ladders, putting our needle through. And this one's a little bit easier to keep track of because we start immediately with K4B and we knit 3 stitches, and that continues all the way around the entire row 7. We can stop to admire our bubbles, so pretty, and see how they're starting to shape up. And then we have rows 8 through 12, which again, it's that stockinette stitch in the round. All we have to do is knit. And continue rows 1 through 12 until your hat is the length that you desire. Now, from the brim all the way up to the top, at 7 inches is a good place to stop to do your decreases if you want that smaller, just beanie sized hat. I personally am going to continue on and do 2 more inches after this because I already have a beanie in this size with this color. I want to do a longer slouchy beanie, and so that is 9 inches until I'm ready for my decrease rows. So the first row, you're either doing row 1 or 7 of the bubble beanie pattern. It depends on where you stopped. And I stopped on row 12, so I'm starting with row 1 just 1 time to do that bubble beanie around the bubble stitch around so I can get a little bit more texture near the top. Now the decreases are knitting 2 stitches together, and then we are knitting accordingly as we go around, and you'll see the knitting 2, it's just knitting 2 stitches together and following the pattern all the way until you are ready to switch to double pointed needles. Once it starts getting tight on that circular needle, I switch to the double pointed needles. And here's how it looks once you have all the stitches on those 3 double pointed needles. And that 4th needle is what you knit from. If this is new to you, I do have a video on switching from circular to double pointed needles. And continue your decreases all the way around according to the pattern until only 6 stitches remain. We'll take our tapestry needle after cutting our yarn and thread it through those 6 stitches right there, removing the knitting needles, and we'll go all the way around. Take the yarn, put it to the back of your work, and weave it on through. Cut your yarn, and you are almost done. You still have some more yarn tails that you need to weave in. And since we have it inside out, let's go ahead and look. I really like the texture on the wrong side of the work too. So maybe we can call this a reversible hat. And if you'd like, you can add a pom-pom. I hope you have enjoyed seeing how the Bubble Beanie Hat is knit up. Thank you so much for joining me. I have so many other great projects that I hope you give a try. Please subscribe to my channel, Studio Knit, and I will see you next time. Bye!